You might have read the title and gotten a little confused by what I meant. So I'm going to explain it to you right now. I haven't seen any videos on YouTube really going in depth to price to performance ratios on any of these gaming handhelds that came out. And that upsets me. So I thought maybe I'll do the research, I'll crunch the numbers for you, and I will let you guys know what exactly you are buying and if it's worth it or not. So I put together a list of around the 5 of the most popular gaming handhelds out right now going into 2026, right before the holidays. Hopefully you get to see this before you make a big purchase if you're buying one of these gaming handhelds for somebody, just so you're informed. So when I say crunch the numbers, what do I mean by that? So basically, I took one benchmark this time around. So I needed a game that they all can play, that I could get a benchmark off of. And I thought the most high intensive game that I could probably test all of them with is Cyberpunk 2077. What I did was I played Cyberpunk 2077, or if I don't own these handhelds, I did the research. I figured out how well these systems run Cyberpunk 2077 versus how much you pay for the actual system itself. So that's essentially the breakdown of the math I did. So overall, the ratio from price to performance equals your overall score. So without further ado, let's get into it with the Nintendo Switch 2 starting us off at $450 or $449.99 in the States. As you know, Cyberpunk 2077 was the launch title for the Switch 2, so it's been pretty optimized to actually run on the system, and it's actually one of the only games that actually fits on the physical card. This being one of my favorite games of all time, I was very excited to see it come to Switch 2, knowing that I was going to be picking one up. And I gotta say, my time on the Switch 2 playing Cyberpunk 2077 has been enjoyable. There are some areas that look amazing and I can't believe it's running on a Nintendo system. And then there's some times where there's some to be desired. But overall, this is about price to performance, right? So when you're playing Cyberpunk, what are you going into it looking for? Are you looking to play the game, or are you looking for the pretty visuals, right? I would say that the Nintendo Switch 2 could play this game at like medium to low settings pretty well, consistently. And I averaged about a 40 FPS even in Dogtown, which is very, very intensive in any system. So with that, our first console gives us a score of 89, which is insane for Nintendo, right? So again, this is price to performance, how much you're paying versus what you're getting, and then that's your overall score. I got an 89 for the Nintendo Switch 2 because it is very, very cheap compared to these other handhelds. I'm telling you that right now. Compared to all these other gaming handhelds, the Switch 2 is probably the best bang for the buck off rip. I'm just starting that with the video right now, which is pretty insane to think about because it wasn't that long ago where we were talking about the original Switch being the most underpowered thing even when it came out. So to see this jump in performance after a generation is pretty huge. And it's playing one of the most graphically intense games there is right now, even though it is an older title. I think it came out in like 2020, whatever. Still, I'd say that's a pretty good bang for your buck. And number 2 on the list is the ROG Ally X, the one from 2024, which retails around $800 or so. So I love my Ally. I love my Ally so much, my Ally X. I bought it when it came out, and I traded in my old ROG Ally, the white one, that didn't have the Z1 Extreme processor. It was the base model one, right? And going from that to the Ally X blew my mind. The 80 watt-hour battery, it was a better performing console. It was just overall a better experience. And I had so much more fun playing on this thing. I've played, I would say before I got my Switch 2, and even now, I would say that if I want to play games portably, I generally go towards my Ally because it can play my Steam library. Obviously you can't play Nintendo games on it, which is, I mean, you pick your poison. So all in, I have the ROG Ally X running Cyberpunk at around 47 FPS consistently, which is pretty good considering that most desktop computers run this game at like 50, 60 FPS. So the fact that you could play that in handheld is kind of insane. So with that, we have 47 FPS, $800. It gives us a score around 65, which kind of sucks. That really sucks. That compared to the other things on this list, the price to performance ratio is not, it's not that good. 65 is technically a failing grade. And I think that comes with the territory of it is somewhat of a luxury item, and it's not something that everybody's going to want or need. And some people are just going to want to play their games, handheld games that are not as intensive, and play much more intensive games on their PC. This is supposed to kind of split the gap in between, so I give it some credit, but the numbers, they give me a 65, which is kind of upsetting, but that's what you get. Now to one of the most popular gaming handhelds probably in existence right now. Even though it is a little older, it still tops the charts in the most recommended thing that you could buy if you want to play your games on the go. It's got a beautiful screen. You can play your entire Steam library, and that would be the Steam Deck, specifically the OLED. Now, the OLED retails around $650, but you could easily get that on sale, I think under like $6. It all depends where you're shopping. Now, I personally don't own an OLED, but I did have to go through YouTube to get my performance numbers here, so just a little note on that. So with the Steam Deck OLED coming in around $650 brand new, and it runs Cyberpunk at around 30 FPS, which is our lowest of the day so far, giving us a price to performance score of 56, which is very bad. Now, you could go with the original Steam Deck and not have the nicer screen. I excluded that from this list. So the original Steam Deck would bring your score up to like a 65, around where the Ally is, just because you have that drop in FPS, which for me personally, I never really coveted a Steam Deck or Steam Deck OLED, because I want the versatility of being able to do whatever I want with what I'm holding. I don't want to be limited to just playing my Steam games. Now, I know you can mod it, but out the box, my ROG Ally X can do everything the Steam Deck can. So there's really no reason for me to have one. Now, we're gonna move into the latest of the handhelds that came out, starting with the new ROG Xbox Ally, the base model. So with the new Z2A processor within these new generation of Ally consoles, say that 10 times fast, it still comes in at around $600, which is still $50 less than a Steam Deck OLED, but you're not getting that nice of a screen. Even though you're not getting that nice of a screen, you're still getting more performance than the last generation base model Ally, which really isn't saying that much. So I don't see anybody using this thing more than a light gaming console, very much like a Steam Deck. This thing is very comparable to the regular Steam Deck. And to be honest, if it was my money, you'd be better off with a regular model Steam Deck, non-OLED, than getting this thing, because this thing is just way too expensive for what it is. $600 for a base model Xbox Ally is not worth it. I'm telling you that right now. So with that being said, it also runs Cyberpunk at around 30 FPS with very low dips, and is not a very enjoyable experience on it, which is now giving us a score of 56. And that really sucks. 56, I mean, it sucks. So obviously with the new RAM shortage and data centers for blah blah, all this crazy fun stuff that nobody likes to talk about, apparently these Xbox consoles are still way too expensive. They're just way too expensive. Nobody's buying these for retail. Everyone's waiting for these to go on sale. The Ally X that I bought was on sale for $600 when I bought it, and then I traded in my base model Ally and I paid like $300 all in for an Ally X. Like, there's things and there's deals to be had, and there's things you could do to subsidize costs just a little bit better. Now that brings us to our last but not least, and certainly our most powerful console of the list at $1,000, is the ROG Xbox Ally X. Again, this comes in at $1,000, and like I said, it is probably the most performative out of any handheld out right now when you compare it to the new Lenovo Legion Go 2, or the Lenovo Legion 2, whatever it is. That thing comes down around like $1,300, and you're not getting much better performance than the Ally X, which is why I didn't include it on this list. So this is where I have personally been debating. Like, I have the Ally X from 2024, and the jump to the Xbox Ally X is considerable. Like, it's a 10 to 15% performance bump. But $1,000 for 10 to 15%, I mean, maybe I could trade my Ally in and maybe that'll help, but it plays my games just fine. But if you are a power hungry person and you need the best of the best, the Xbox Ally X, coming at $1,000, will run Cyberpunk at around 55 to 60 FPS, giving us an overall score of 47, which is by far the worst number on the list. Now, the game that I chose has a lot to do with this, because this game has been optimized for Switch, and, well, to be honest, it's optimized for Windows as well. So if you really think about it, that's why I chose Cyberpunk, because it is an optimized game at this point compared to when it came out. But all these consoles should be able to run this relatively decently, and the fact that you're paying $1,000 for the Xbox Ally X and not seeing a huge jump in performance says a whole lot about this console, and that's actually why I'm making this video. Because in a lot of cases, you do not need to spend the money for the games you want to play. If you are a big indie gamer, if you like smaller cutesy games, or even if you like games, don't need to be cutesy, but if they're smaller, you don't need the best gaming handheld there is out there. You just don't. But with all that being said, our winner from today's video is the Nintendo Switch 2 with our highest score. We haven't had anything above the 70s. The Nintendo Switch 2 comes in at 89, and everything else is not even close. Not even close for what you're paying versus what you're getting. So I hope that puts everything into perspective a little bit. You know, there's different niches, there's different things for everybody, and I get that. But if you're really looking for the best bang for your buck, just to get something in your hands, start playing games, and get the most power for your dollar, the Nintendo Switch 2 has got to be the way to go, especially since it just came out. It's still MSRP. There hasn't been any price increases as of yet, and they're in every store. There is no shortage of Switch 2s right now. I go to Walmart every time and I see Switch 2s in the case. Target, Best Buy, they're always there. You can't say the same about these other consoles, to be honest, because they're also looking at price increases in the near future. So again, if you're looking to pick up one of these gaming handhelds and you just want the best bang for your buck, the Nintendo Switch 2 is today's winner. Now guys, I just want to say real quick, thank you for the support. The last video is doing actually pretty well. That actually motivated me to make today's video, because there are some of you out there who have been wondering where I have been. Now, if you like today's video, leave a like, subscribe. I'm trying to post regularly. I'm trying to get back to one video a week consistently if I can. So I need your guys' help to do that, because with your help, I can wake up with a smile on my face and make YouTube videos. So again, thanks for watching, guys. I'll see you in the next one. Peace.